Ansary here, coming to you on June 10th, 2015, from sunny southern Colorado. Now, well over a month since I have left the Portland area. I'm going to be talking about some of the updates going on with me, as well as other things going on in the world. It's going to be about an hour-long rant that's going to re-air on Portland Cable Access. This is the 10th year of Outside the Box TV. I started the show back in 2004 during a major shift in my own life, as I had my own initial political spiritual awakening, although throughout my whole life, I have always questioned my reality and authority as we have come to know it, be it the things that we're told by our parents, by our school system, by the system itself that we're born into. So there's a lot of things taking place in the world that need to be addressed in the proper context. And excuse the sweating, I'm doing this show from a hot RV at about 1:15 in the afternoon, so the heat is beaming down. And I have been enjoying my stay here in Colorado. It's been a very healing experience for me. Being back in a rural environment, being back in a place where the cost of living is much more affordable than the Portland area. In fact, there's a place right next door to the place that I'm renting at the moment. It's a 2-bedroom home for $500 a month. Like, I can't even fathom that in a place like Portland, or a place like, some of these places in California or the East Coast. So every day is a day of gratitude and thankfulness. I take time for meditation, prayer, exercise, working on myself, as well as being aware of what's going on in the world. And it's really important to have a healthy mind, body, and spirit, and to be able to identify for you what that is. Right now, in this day and age, you have a lot of people in the conspiracy research community, and also others that haven't fully awakened to the fact that there are aspects of control to both sides of a political party, or both sides of a conflict. They're Democrats and Republicans alike that are getting their own source of news from their own preferred media outlet. So much is distorted right now in terms of what's actually happening geopolitically. And I'm talking about what's going on between the United States and Russia, what's going on between the United States and China. And there is so much evidence going back decades to show that there is deep military cooperation, technology cooperation, economic cooperation, intelligence community cooperation when it comes to all of these nations. And they've all used the threat of Islam as the excuse to go into the Middle East and set up these new systems, set up these new deals. The United States has spent a lot of time with U.S. taxpayer dollars in the Middle East. And in the end, it's the East. It's not just special interests in the West. It's not just Western bakers. There's a lot of corrupt entities involved in this takeover of the Middle East. So first and foremost, people should know this. People should know this as these drumbeats to war continue to pound and build and develop new rhythms. The narrative for war is being built. And a lot of people are numb to this. A lot of people are saying, well, this is just the new Cold War. It's always been this way. Keep your common sense intact. Okay? Look at what's happening and look at the track record, and understand the relevancy of this information. The United States builds something, a plane, a jet. It develops some sort of technology that can be used for destruction, mass destruction. And you see this technology in various ways ending up all throughout the world in the hands of other governments like China and Russia. And then from there, it ends up in the hands of other groups that the United States goes out and fights later on. Or the United States, of course, just arms openly certain groups, and it becomes widely known. Right now, it's widely known throughout the world for anyone that is not fully under mind control. that the U.S. government is arming and training ISIS. It's not just examples in Syria. There are examples all across the board. This is so wrong. It is so immoral. So the U.S. model is a model set up to fail. As I've said in many episodes on Outside the Box TV, it's a suicide move. It's a kamikaze. It's the twisting of the sword. What you've got right now, let me give you a couple updates. More exercises in Eastern Europe. All these things being done to provoke Russia. Meanwhile, Putin comes out and says, we don't want war with NATO. So they make this statement, hey, we're peaceful. And the world sees this. The world's watching. The whole world's watching. The whole world's watching. The whole world is watching the theater of war. And they are seeing Putin behave in a manner that one could perceive if they don't have the background information. He is playing the calm role. He's playing the role of the diplomat. He is playing the role as potentially the peacemaker, and a narrative is being built. And I've been commenting on this narrative the last couple of years, how the narrative is being built. What took place in Syria, John Kerry making up those fake allegations involved in funding the Bolshevik
that was
Revolution
a
to control the direction of Russia from that point on. Throughout my whole life, and a lot of this is scripted. And I mean my whole life.
Gary Allen wrote
I've
a
been
book
aware
called
that there's been this Cold War
I
thing
should get
between
myself
the U.S. and
copy
Russia.
of Review It.
I've always found it very odd and
discuss
strange
some of the
to see
information in
two
it.
different,
Came out in
what I
1972.
perceive. Back in that
Two
time,
different
people were
versions
talking
of the
about
white
the
man
New World Order, the Illuminati.
set up to
This
be
is not new
at each other's
information.
throat to constantly keep
And that
each
book
other region of the earth,
those
woke a lot of
populations
people
under
up
control
because
always
the
under
time
the
period
threat
that
of
it was
war.
written in, but
And
in
fear of
particular,
war.
it deals with Wall Street financing
out
the
there that
Bolshevik
understand
Revolution
in Russia in 1918.
But
They
for
scoff
decades, there are
and call
people
it
out there that have been,
fear-mongering.
and this is more
When
or
you
less
become
old
aware
school
of and
information,
report
like before
on
the internet and
these
YouTube
moves
and,
towards
and
World War
Google and
III.
all this stuff became the thing.
Because they say, oh,
and
no,
people actually
no,
went
no,
out and
they're-
did
they're
real
all in
research.
bed.
People
They're-
like
they're all
Anthony
friends.
Sutton, to give him
He'll never
props,
actually
as
be a
many
conflict,
others
at least have as
at
well.
least that's what I've been hearing the last couple of years of my life. Because there's been signs years ago that they were going to be heading this route. They would stage a conflict. Obviously, they're building weapons on both sides. There's technology sharing that we know about. There's technology sharing that we don't know about. We know the U.S. is going into a level of debt that it's not going to pay back. A lot of people are speculating that World War III will be the reset button. And again, a great deal of the observers of this theater of war view the U.S. as an aggressor that's acting on its own. And we're talking about U.S. and Western associated organizations that are involved in this military industrial complex mess. So we're talking about Federal Reserve. We're talking about IMF. We're talking about NATO allied forces. We're talking about all the comms, U.S. comm, South comm, all these military drills that, a lot of people have their attention on the West and the Western world being the front for this New World Order. That's dominant in the research community. And I don't subscribe to that. Never did. Always spoke against it. Always. Citing things like, well, why are they all on the same side in the Middle East? Hey, where were China and Russia when it came to 9/11? Didn't China allegedly get that steel from those buildings? Giuliani making sure the forensic evidence, the buildings, after they came down, in on themselves in seconds, shipped to China. But China's going to continue. China's going to continue to hold on to U.S. Treasury notes, to allow the U.S. to go further into debt, to basically loan the U.S. more money. There's a lot of things going on that don't make sense. Now, James Corbett, he has produced something in the last year dealing with China and the New World Order. I recommend people check it out. He sees this as, he puts it, it's like a multi-level chess game. So there's an economic war taking place on one level, and you have another thing taking place on another level. So you have a multi-tier conflict. You have a multi-tier situation. And he also made note of Western governments, banks, financing, propping up, organizing, designing the Chinese financial markets long time ago. Citing examples in the 1990s, specifically 1993. And there are many examples that are out there on the web of the United States going out to the east and propping up these markets for later use. Pay attention to these things that are designed for later use. on the topic of that, China building these massive cities. And people are asking, what are they going to be used for? China today, the island building. You know, on one level, there's massive cooperation between the United States and China, and we're going to talk a little bit about that in just a moment. But on the other hand, they're acting like, well, one false move and we could go to war at any moment in time. And what they're doing right now is they're getting people worldwide psychologically ready for world war. They've been doing it for years with the video games, Call of Duty, things of that nature. But recently, there was a massive drill here in Colorado. Last week, you may have seen the military vehicles, and you may have been wondering what all that was about. For those that saw it, I was talking about Raider Focus, the largest convoy of troops since World War II, going from Fort Carson, a few hundred miles from me, to the Pinyon Canyon training site, about 40 miles from here. And that's also a place where they have a fake Iraqi city. They're looking on the army to get full control of the airspace all around that region so they can practice using weaponized drones. Blowing things up in the Colorado high desert, practicing for foreign wars. But we're not supposed to be concerned about that. No. We're not supposed to go, what is going on? How can you continue to keep going further and further into debt while using your country as a front of aggression all around the world? And you can't even really back it up. How many of you are going to go to the ghetto and start exploding with, a racial attack on, say, a group of that particular race? It may not be the most intelligent thing to do. When you're drunk and, you're walking around with a gold watch. And, it's probably not the best time of the day or night to be talking smack. Some of you understand these common sense things. They don't make sense. When some people go out and do certain things, does it make sense for the United States to be doing what it's doing? How is this not belligerent? Now, what you're seeing is a belligerent act. And then what the world is seeing is a belligerent act. And the way Putin is responding to it, he's coming across to a lot of people as a superstar. With the judo videos and the videos with him with his shirt off, hiking. You can also see him back in the day hanging out with Bush, sign on to their military agreements to just gang rape the hell out of Iraq. No. Russian troops weren't necessarily involved, but Russian troops have allowed the United States to use certain routes to get their gear in. Military agreements. NATO needs to be able to actually take their convoys down certain routes. You need certain cooperation from China and Russia and other governments in order to do that. There's a lot of agreements that have been already signed on to a very long time ago. This concept of a new world order was discussed, by the way, long before 9/11, including false flag events, Reichstag events, events like 9/11, false flag events that appear in the news as one thing, but in reality you have a state criminal government that is controlling the population through terror and fear. And Portland, Oregon, by the way, just to remind some of you, is not exempt from this. Back in 2009, the FBI went out and plucked a guy out of the west part of Portland, Aloha, profiled him as mentally unstable, which there are no shortage of mentally unstable people out there. And to bring Portland, Oregon into the JTTF, to bring more federal energy into Portland in this post-9/11 world, in 2007, a couple years after Portland pulled out of the JTTF, a very familiar pattern, you have this terror scare where people were literally probably in Portland at that point, some of them urinating in their pants under the false notion that someone organically on their own wanted to attack and hurt the people of Portland, Oregon. And we'll talk about a psyops on the local level. Just to take you back, by the way, back to 2007, to probably one of the most cited topics right here on Outside the Box TV. The Top Off 4 exercise of 2007, where the DoD, Homeland Security, had a dirty bomb exercise when Potter was the mayor. Yeah, and Adams was on the council, as well as Nick Fish and Salzman, as well as Amanda Fritz. So 3 of the current council members in Portland were around when they allowed CIA, the Mossad, and a whole host of alphabet agencies, including those that I already mentioned, they have their little dirty bomb exercise where the Portland Office of Emergency Management is literally under the control of Homeland Security. Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth? Should I say this another way? A federal takeover of Portland, Oregon before my very eyes and a dirty bomb drill, in which, before the zombie apocalypse meme actually got popular, before it was cool, they had girls from a high school in Portland, Oregon, dressing up like zombies. There were girls from a local theater class, and they're all acting like they're zombies. And you've seen the old intro to Outside the Box where they have this dirty bomb exercise. We have all these girls with blood, fake blood coming out, fake glass coming out of their face. What is it supposed to be? Sexy? What is it supposed to be? Some sort of movie? But it is a movie. It's like this movie they're constantly creating. So since 9/11, we've seen an explosion in drills taking place. And right now, the hot topic is Jade Helm 15. And there's actually somebody that watches this channel that emailed me saying he is concerned that Jade Helm 15 is really about going after people that are going to be dodging the draft for World War III at whatever point that comes. And, there's something about that I have also contemplated over the last few years. But going back to Top Off 4, because I know there's a few people watching in Portland because this is going to air on Portland Cable Access as well as be posted over at youtube.com/AlexAnsary. Wrap up this thought. A lot of people for years ask, Alex, why Portland? Why do you feel that there's something coming to Portland? As well as what do you see coming to Portland? And those are both kind of two different questions. They require kind of a longer answer, but I'm going to give you a Cliff Notes version, okay? In this staged coming World War III scenario, a lot of the targets are going to be West Coast cities. A lot of this has been made public a long time ago, and not just from threats from China and Russia, but also other countries. Now, it may be very true that some of these countries have been armed and financed by the United States, and some people that are conspiracy researchers or independent thinkers, other people in the alternative or grassroots media, they're looking at this and they're laughing. They're going, no, there'll never be a conflict because all these guys are on the same side. And by the way, it looks like Putin and China are good guys. They're just trying to stop Western aggression. And again, what people are looking at and perceiving is a fallacy. It is a script. And in that script, right now at least, the script is designed to make China and Russia look like the good guys in the global government. Good guy, bad guy scenario. Because they're already in the global government. We already know, most people, that China's one-child policy, draconian one-child policy, was crafted by people like Kissinger, influenced by people like Zbigniew Brzezinski, influenced obviously by the United Nations, the UN one-child policy, right? And the role that China plays in the UN and will play in the UN in particular is already playing in UN peacekeeping roles, starting with Africa, starting with other nations. And of course, right now, the whole PR is to make both China and Russia look like the good guys. They're responding to certain disasters, earthquakes. Already, there's video popping up. This is so scripted. I'm a little shocked. Some people aren't seeing this. That all of a sudden, the cameras can be there. RT, CCTV, other networks to make these foreign governments look like heroes and rescuers in their peacekeeping operation uniforms and outfits. And that's what all these videos are meant to do. Portland, Oregon is 60 miles out from the ocean. If there's any war, if there's any invasion, you're looking at port cities, being cities of value, being cities that could be targeted. Obviously, places like Miami. Obviously, Seattle, being closer to the ocean, right on the ocean. Obviously, Los Angeles. Obviously, Washington, D.C., New York City, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Dallas, Texas, major financial center, Kansas City, Missouri, Colorado Springs, Denver, Colorado. So there are a number of primary, well-known, more than likely targets in dense population centers that could come under attack. Also, things that could allow an attack. As you now know, the potential for an EMP or a massive power outage potentially caused by a massive solar flare. You know, the whole roll at will, the whole random aspect of the solar flare scenario is one in which obviously the planet is in motion, the sun is in motion and in rotation. And so there is no guarantee at any point in the future, at any time whatsoever, that on a certain date, a certain part of the planet will be the more in line of sight of the solar flare. But there are issues dealing with the southern and northern hemisphere. And NASA is very much concerned about the atmosphere, the hemisphere rather. The atmosphere here, by the way, is very hot. So I'm focusing to get through this thought. There's a lot of risk over the United States for a lot of different reasons. Whether we're looking at the solar flare potential, the northern hemisphere, which we're in, and the potential for us to be more affected by the solar radiation and solar plasma, all those protons. And so it's of grave concern to what could be called the controllers. I don't get into Planet X on this show. I don't get into Comet Elenin. That was a scare from a couple of years ago. There are major celestial changes, alignments, obviously solar flares and other things that are affecting life down here on Earth. But I think that the biggest thing that we have coming to us is this stage-managed World War III scenario, where in reality, Putin, Obama, and these other world leaders, the leadership over China, these guys are reading from some sort of a script. Now, how this is organized, that I don't claim to have the answer or crystal ball to tell you that. But I will tell you this, you're not going to understand the real nature of the global elite by reading the 2015 Bilderberg attendee list. Because the Bilderberg Group is primarily a gathering place of Western-based elitists to gather in public on the level that they do. Of course, the real stuff isn't going to happen in plain sight like that. The very fact that the Bilderberg Group is primarily Western nations, primarily steered by NATO, is more evidence that this is something that's just there for public consumption. I would steer away from people, certain websites that are claiming to have the inside scoop when they have a track record of saying that certain things would happen several years ago, and in reality, things are very different. There is a much bigger picture than the Bilderberg Group, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, and the groups in which are already public, that have websites, that have been written about. There are some people out there that do not cover certain things, not because necessarily they're shills or because they're agents, but because they're under a form of programming. And they haven't yet become fully honest with how global this whole system really is. Let's take one example that I've used before, just to mention it in brief. You have a country like Afghanistan that has actually been through multiple decades of war, of poverty, of famine, of the Afghan people living the refugee experience, of the Afghan people being discriminated against and brutalized. You know, there were obviously factors that led to the invasion of Afghanistan. They were trying to overthrow Afghanistan back in the 70s, and we're talking about the Russian government. The Russian government is working to overthrow the Afghan government from inside Kabul, And you had the United States on the other side. Zbigniew Brzezinski admitted it, funding the rebels. This is before the Soviet invasion. Before the Soviet invasion, the United States was already in there funding the other side. Now, one could say, well, that was good to keep the Russians out. And one could agree. You're not going to find a whole lot of Afghans out there or anyone that would say, hey, you know what, I don't really want to be under Russian occupation or any occupation from any state whatsoever. So the United States has been seen by the Afghan people and other people throughout the world as some sort of hero and aid of the Afghan people. It certainly was during the 1980s. And during the 1980s, the Afghan people weren't looked down upon globally. You weren't seeing headlines every time it said Afghan was, Afghan does this, or some sort of act of terrorism, or some other type of insanity. Not to say it's just that group, but quite a few Islamic names are thrown out there on a regular basis associated with terrorism. There's a massive global mind control operation taking place that basically turn billions of people on the planet against an actual group. And a lot of people associate skin tone in some cases, in some countries, if they think you're from a certain place, with being a Muslim, because it's widely believed. And in some cases, it's seen that people are from a certain region, they may identify with being of a certain religion. And thus, in this day and age, they've associated with Islam, all of Islam for that matter, with terrorism. We're in a period of time where when you have a certain amount of the population believing such absurd propaganda, when it comes to your rights, when it comes to your constitution, it's a major it's a major Richter scale on the 9, on a 10 scale. It's DEFCON 5, alert system. It's a dangerous situation where you have a certain amount of the population that has access to information actually fall succumb to the psychosis that America is currently being invaded by ISIS. And this whole fable about ISIS, and you look at areas where what's believed to be the greatest military on the earth, U.S. military, they go in somewhere for 10 years, set up supposedly another government, and ISIS, this supposed organic Islamic, although they'll go and kill other Muslims, but they're seen as, and they're being used as the spokespeople for Islam. When you're looking at the Western media, Islamic State, they prefer to say Islamic State, by the way, over than ISIS. They can constantly bring those two together. Religious state organization that they're trying to convince people is more powerful than the U.S. military. See, this needs to be discussed for those of you, any of you that have served, any of you that knows anyone that's serving. Apparently they're sending more troops back to Iraq to fight ISIS. And then Obama comes out in another video saying there's no concrete strategy to fight ISIS. Some of you have probably wondered why America hasn't defeated ISIS. And the fact of the matter is, when you have eventually people no longer believing what the media is saying, because, oh my God, this is all just a hoax. See, you have a cry wolf scenario. What if people really actually needed to be warned about an actual threat within the United States, or a group of individuals that were going through certain neighborhoods, kidnapping women and selling them on the black market? America has some dark days ahead, I think, in particular on the West Coast of the United States. So, I think certain threats and risks are very real. And I think people really need to come to terms with the reality and facts that have already been presented and put out there in the public domain concerning Western intelligence agencies and white slavery, concerning U.S. troops raping Afghani women, Iraqi women, Russian troops doing the same thing to women in the Middle East. And a lot of things also that have been done to Americans or white women. There's the nature of the beast itself, of the unconscious animal, human being that can be duped into war after war after war. All the more reason to not let yourself just be so influenced by this beast system, the smartphones, the video games, the fast food, the selfishness, the Satanism, which hopefully you're intelligent enough to realize is not devil worship or the perception that someone's worshiping Satan as an entity or devil. Satanism as people worshiping themselves, their own little pleasures, their own little gain. Oh, and what they're going to get out of life, i.e., a lot of the people that you have residing and living and moving to the Portland, Oregon area, just to pick one area or part of the planet as an example. For those watching online, you may be reminded of your town or your city where you're seeing the people almost metamorph into like the angry orcs from Lord of the Rings. Because the reality is, a lot of the cities that we're seeing, a lot of the people in the cities today in America are a very different level of consciousness than that which certainly I saw 10 years ago, 15 years ago, where people seemed more connected, where things seemed more romantic. We need to kind of bring this up a little bit. When man and woman, because man and woman always had their issues. We know that. And there's a lot of stuff that we have to work out and evolve beyond. But the level of distrust taking place right now between the sexes, and some of this may be cyclical, happening between hundreds of years, thousands of years. We're going to go this period where there is just like this massive distrust, racial tension, and all these other things. And the cities, and especially melting pots like Portland, a future New York of the West Coast. Today we're seeing a lot of that manufactured gender war, or the neo-feminism, or dark feminine rising, where women have been turned against men and have been given the false knowledge that all this is about the doing of men, or white men, or brown men, or black men, period. The penis caused this. There is a lack of just genuine common sense, spiritual awareness as to what we are beyond men and women. So a lot of males and females today are still boys and girls. They're adults. They're running around drinking. They're running around twerking. They're running around having babies, although they're still babies. And they have these gadgets. They have these smartphones, and they are more consumed with materialism, narcissism, controlling their mate, dishonesty, lust, than actually what is happening to other people across the planet in other countries at the hands of this military. There are people still in our society that have not woken up, that are still bedding down with these individuals, that are still enabling the servants of the New World Order, that still don't have the bravery, that still don't have the maturity to call out evil when they see it. So they don't even know, people today, unfortunately, when they're bringing evil into their life, because people are being given false truths about their reality, being told there are no consequences for your actions, that you can just run amok, that you can just bomb, that you can sit for hours visualizing yourself murdering others with a video game, with a controller, that you can just run around using men and playing people and controlling people and being unconscious with your sexuality instead of conscious with your sexuality. They have people, they have men and women, they have women and men that are not actually tapped into their true masculine or feminine selves. So we have a bunch of half women and half men that actually have stunted growth, run around with their cell phones, losing themselves in a virtual world and denying their own awareness. When I used to live in Portland, if I so much as looked at a certain person, they'd look around going, "Who's looking at me? Who that?" We all have that, and they've done science. They have produced a number of scientific publications, that is, studies on the subatomic realm. And when scientists start looking at a particle, it becomes a particle. When we look away, it ceases to exist. When you look at someone like a cell, or subatomic cell, or particle, it activates, it becomes alive. So there's power in awareness, there's power in attention. Okay? Power and awareness, power and attention. We have creative abilities. Are we using them consciously, unconsciously? I think most of you know the answer to that. This is all really important. Because as human beings, the attention that we have is powerful. The sexuality that you have is powerful. The beauty that you have is powerful. The intellect that you have is powerful. But if you're running around serving this beast system, hurting others, hurting yourself, putting drugs in your body, not even thinking about the future, living the hamster life like a lot of people around you, there's no spiritual evolution in that. And ultimately, being in human form, that's what this is really all about. You have a purpose to even being alive. And there's a part of you that's able to understand the words that are coming out of my mouth and understand this outside the box of a religious overtone. You know, without giving you a lecture, without telling you about hell or this and that. There's an ability you have inside. If you've been brutalized by the church, to overcome that trauma and still understand there's something teeming with life about this planet that goes far beyond anything Darwin could ever explain. And before Darwin passed on, he admitted his thesis, basically in general, wasn't very accurate or scientific, but it's still a religion to the scientism followers of today's day and age that are only looking at those two possibilities. I caution thee from assuming you know it all, because no one really knows where we really came from. But what is clear is there's something more to what we are. What is clear is that there are changes taking place on the planet. We can look at the sun and realize that we're in a period of solar maximum, and that other humans came before us that figured out there were patterns of the sun that correlated with patterns of world wars, that correlated with patterns of people moving from one place to another, that correlated with periods where there was more botanical growth and changes in the weather, and people like Mitch Batros of Earth Changes Media tracking the amount of earth change events, earthquakes, tsunamis, things like that, volcanic eruptions taking place. And this is the tail end of solar cycle number 24. Now, at the moment, it's been a pretty quiet month for solar flares. But NASA put out their projection a couple years ago, and it looks like it's accurate so far. And it's a double peak solar flare cycle, with the tail end of it culminating in late 2015. And that's very interesting. Late 2015. Knowing what we know already and what I've already talked about solar flares and things happening, false flag events, things being staged, the potential that maybe at the tip top of this pyramid, at the dark occult level, maybe beyond human consciousness, those that are actually steering world events, they understand something about human physiology. They understand chronobiology, how human biology is affected by the cycles of the sun. Chinese sunspot cycle count goes back 2,500 years. Galileo only goes back to 1602. Humankind has been looking at the sun for a long, long time. And even though you have people that are interested in star science, astrology, what planet is mounting, what planet is at war with another planet, what planet is arguing with another planet or in retrograde, the sun, in my opinion, is the more fascinating thing to study and understand. And we can see this period coming up of September 2015 and all this focus that these elitists around the world have put on this time period. We see Jade Helm 15. We see Russia with a massive air defense drill. They're convincing their people that the U.S. is interested in invading them. What are they supposed to think with the U.S. doing exercises in Eastern Europe, trying to to give you a few more updates, missile defense shield in Poland. Massive shift that we've seen in Eastern Europe over the course of the last 10 years, even back when Bush was the president. This has been ongoing, this new Cold War buildup. And CNN is showing you that the narrative is building. It doesn't mean that CNN is a truthful institution, but it's not just CNN doing that. You'll notice CNN doing that with Fox News. You'll notice Fox News doing that with MSNBC. You'll notice the propaganda and the statements from MSC. You'll jump all of a sudden to OPB. And you'll be hearing this, and then you'll jump to like what you think is like left radio or Democrat stuff, and they're repeating the same Pentagon talking points. For the last 10 years, they turn to NPR. Oh, today in Afghanistan, so-and-so people got killed in a suicide bomber. This is why we've got to stay in Afghanistan. And now, let's go to a story about cooking hummus. Now we're off to Nepal. It's fresh air. Dong, 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 dong. And that's what I've observed this last decade. And people buying the propaganda. Democrat, Republican, Russia versus China. Rather, United States. People versus the government. Civil war paradigms. Divide and conquer. Black versus white. And as mentioned earlier, man versus woman. Oh, and by the way, there aren't enough champions for the true divine feminine in today's society. And the true divine feminine, it can express itself through a male or a female. But the feminine is a nurturer. The feminine cares. The true feminine hasn't become a full-on robot. The true divine feminine doesn't go for the bad boys of today's society. The divine true feminine doesn't get hot when a dude slaps her. The true divine feminine actually is turned off by dudes that just wear the suit and tie and get down themselves and fellatio the system for Federal Reserve notes. The true divine feminine loves gardens, loves nature, loves life. The true divine feminine is appalled by the servants of the military-industrial complex. The true divine feminine could never serve the New World Order. The true divine feminine could never bed down with a man that serves the draconian evil. There's other adjectives I can use. The archonic system. The true divine feminine would be playing their part in the world evolving instead of making fake declarations that the world has already shifted and this is the time to worship ourselves. I would really recommend people tap into their psychic selves. Like I said, you know what? If I were to look at you on the street, you'll feel me because you can feel my attention. And that could just be because my attention looking at you at that moment. But the fact of the matter is you're picking up on something. I would really channel that to what's really going on because that's how they can get Americans so freaked out about ISIS because Americans feel something's coming on a level they can't really pinpoint. So, and I picked up on this pattern years ago. Those in control that are involved in manufacturing events and shootings and false flags and other things. They divert this is what you were concerned about. It's this. And the master's like, yes, I totally feel danger coming. That must be what it is. The whole Al-Qaeda thing was no different because we were going through danger then. We were going full on into the New World Order, into the surveillance society, talks of implantable microchips, becoming more regular on the news. By the way, now they're talking about mandatory vaccines for children in California. They're also talking more about a certain amount of the population in Australia being all for the microchip, A-OK. So we've seen a lot since 9/11 and prior to 9/11 in just a short span of time. And it's important to stay healthy in mind, body, and spirit, in particular mind, because the mind is where there's memory, but memory could also be in the non-local realms as well. But if we can remember and understand that, and to turn my attention to, say, the viewing audience that may be watching in Portland, to give you an example of what Portland was like 20 years ago. The energy, to focus on the energy, what it was like, what the people of Portland were like, the gatherings, people being free-spirited. The women were different. They were so much more loving. They were so much more loving. It was incredibly more loving in a place like Portland years ago. It wasn't perfect. You still had your gangs. You still had your, you had crack. You had a big crack epidemic that came. You had, and Portland has its history. But as far as like that small town feel, things were different. And feeling the change, it was more like this place is being invaded in slow motion. And it's one phase of the invasion. Right now, it's just other people moving in that are just rushing away from places that have just come. They themselves maybe played a part and just being so apathetic that they didn't even do a damn thing to try to make their world a better place before they left it, before that town went bankrupt. You have a lot of people that are fleeing areas because things have gotten really bad. People that are not active at all in anything. They're just in response mode. Oh, I heard there's more water. I was told Portland was more livable. I heard that, and they're like, whoa, get here and you see all the strip clubs. Get there and see all the homeless. And you get to Portland and you see all the stories about local corruption. And you see how many drunks there are. And you read about those stories of sexual assault and you feel a little uneasy. And yeah, take a look at how much has changed in Portland. Look at how people in Portland, the real narcissists that think this is like a super conscious place, look at how people are living in those false realities and see the whole world like that at the microcosm. Portland's the microcosm for the macrocosm in regard to the concept of things being in a backwards realm, inverted. And what I'm speaking now, as I conclude in this last 10 minutes, this is going to be an important one as I shift. Gnostic wisdom is being revitalized in the soul and body of mankind today. It's coming out through the speech, through the chit-chatter that you're hearing about protecting your psyche, protecting your spirit, grounding yourself, understanding we're not alone in this universe. And in terms of ETs and UFOs, a lot of stuff that's the physical stuff that you're seeing is stuff that has been proven time and time again to be operated by government institutions. And now NASA is talking about their flying saucer that they're sending you to the moon. At some point in the near future, everybody just go, oh, that's just another UFO from NASA, or that's just the International Space Station. But the real potential, I suspect, okay, hypothetically, a lot of stuff's going on non-physically, and we're in our own petri dish. And in this world, there are too many very clear signs that there is a organized, corrupt syndicate, highly corrupt syndicate embedded with all the super state nations that's obviously operating at a level beyond human detection, one could say. This has been, for thousands of years, mankind has written and shared and documented quite a bit in its mythos about the others. Now, Portland is a place where a lot of people have been drawn to that are worshiping their own agendas in this life, in their life. And I've seen that spirit of narcissism and heartlessness rise. And others that are watching these channels and hearing some of us describe what we're seeing in these cities are seeing a similar thing. Years ago, there was all this disinformation about this collective shift in consciousness that was, people were so detailed with their hallucinations. We're talking about people levitating up into the sky, into spacecrafts. Starting in the 1980s, moving into the 90s, the rhetoric started changing a little bit after the New Age rapture didn't happen of the year 2000. But this false belief system that we're now in a utopia, that certain things are progressive, that certain things are enlightened, that certain things are spiritual. Portland seems to be showing that it has a higher than average concentration of these self-worshippers. And so this is where people misinterpret what I'm saying. I don't believe the end of the world is coming. But I believe that a lot of people are getting their karma handed to them right now. And there's a lot of people out there that think that they're on the spiritual path in this life. And they're actually playing a role in the suffering of others. Or they're holding up corrupt institutions either through their vote, through their ignorance, their lack of wanting to know, their desire to just relax and have a party. There are consequences for our actions. And that selfish, greedy, dominant energy that has overtaken Portland, the one that'll let certain people just die out in the street, the people that won't be politically active and actually speak up when others are hurt, the people that are only in a certain place to get their drink on, to get their lay on, to get high, to have a nice place to live. Nothing wrong with a nice place to live. People that literally operate solely out of animalism aren't going to have very good things happening to them. So if you have a whole geographic region of a bunch of people of like minds that are just living their lives to serve themselves, that are quick to point the finger and judge others. There's a lot of people in Portland that, like to stay in their own political box of Democrat, left, socialist, and call someone else a conspiracy theorist without even knowing the harm of their actions when they place judgment on others. In my opinion, Portland's going to be a real dangerous place one day because of the actions of the Portlanders, people that have migrated there, and there is a certain amount of activism there. I'll give it that. But that activism and that emotion, that radicalism that you've seen from Portlanders over the course of well over 100 years has something to do with where Portland is on the map. It's a very powerful place. And so I felt more of what was going on around the world in Portland. There's something about some of us having a heightened sensitivity, I think, in certain areas. And I felt more emotionally reactive to it being in Colorado and being at a different elevation. My body, mind, and spirit feels very different. I feel a lot more focused. And I have come to my own understanding that it had a lot to do with the magnetic field influence and so many other things. Now, some of this is beyond what you're willing to believe. But what I will say, in short, on this topic, I hope I haven't lost you all, is that there's a reason why you see so much stuff going down in Portland and why you see so many people drawn to Portland, and sometimes why you see really bad things go down in Portland. Crimes. There's a heavy primal earth, high energy in terms of powerful, not necessarily positive, not necessarily negative. It expresses itself in a wide variety of ways. Portland, P-Town, Stumptown, the Rose City, is a city like no other because of where it sits on the planet, because of the ancient history, and because of how some of the spirits and energies are activated during solar flares and solar cycles. This information is powerful. This is information you can use. And this is something that I'm going to keep working on. And so people over the years have misunderstood me when they've seen me get real passionate or they've seen me get really emotional and misinterpret the show as a show that deals with end times theology as another typical conspiracy theorist program or a wannabe of somebody else. This whole thing has been one giant, and this should be inspiring to you because it'll be close here. You can do the same thing yourself, not necessarily alternative media, but to be on the path of truth and to speak truth, because that's what this is all about. We're going through a cycle, and that's the relation to the sun. We're going through a solar cycle, and there are many solar cycles that we go through over the course of our lives, and we're going through a cycle right now within our own government, within our world, within our own society, within our own psyche. And it's important to understand this, and that there is something beyond a linear beginning and an end. Right now, a lot of people in the West are stuck in Western thinking of a beginning and an end, of things being linear. And not everyone is seeing the obvious cyclical nature of this. Even some New Agers that may look at some Buddhist teachings, which is based on Eastern circular thinking, many of them have shown themselves to be linearists when they've talked about the collective shift in consciousness where we evolve beyond all these problems. That hasn't happened. All that's done is just result in people labeling people the messengers of truth, presenting truth as negative. A lot of us know exactly what that's like. It's important that people understand there is another perspective out there other than the idea that the world is coming to an end, or that everyone's going to end up in a FEMA camp this September, or that, if you go out there and you put out truth on the internet, that you're going to end up on the list. I've been doing this now 10 years. And as I've talked about before, a lot of the struggles and challenges that I face have dealt with assimilating into society. And having really leapt out of society in the last month and come here to Southern Colorado, where I stay in a rural community most of my time, and I do a little bit of work on the net, run a couple websites. I produce videos. I'm making a video now to you from my RV. Just following the synchronicity based on a 100% knowing that the things that we are doing, not just myself, but some of you, are things that need to be done and are being done with others, because we are working spiritually as a collective, whether we agree with that or like that or not. We are working with others towards a common outcome, because as human beings, we are gifted with the ability to communicate. That's what makes us different than the animal kingdom, and I'll communicate there. You have the ability to communicate truth. I have the ability to communicate truth. And we have a world out there where all these deceptions are going on in plain sight. You have a choice to make. We all have choices to make. And the choices that we make, whether or not we serve this evil system, whether or not we bed down with this evil system, or those that serve the system, whether or not we speak out about the system, it all has an effect on our soul. And where our soul goes, and what experiences we have, that is a much more important reality to live in and be aware of than what's going on with Kim Kardashian, than how much you may have enjoyed that frozen pizza, than how much you may have enjoyed that array of drinks at that bar downtown with that chick with the hair like that made you feel real good. Real good. This is a time for people, if they're truly on the path to higher consciousness, to evolve beyond those things that have bound us down to the realm of materialism. See, a lot of people don't understand. They think this is all about end times theology. Speaking out. Remember this always as we conclude. When there is threat of losing your life by speaking the truth, when you use technology that can be used to trace you and kill you, to speak out against things that could come with repercussions, when you speak out against those things that are done, those evils that are done to others, in a great way you empower and, as ironic as it sounds, protect yourself, and in particular your soul. When you speak for others that don't have a voice, you actually do something for yourself. And with that, I'm going to leave a paraphrase, a quote from MLK. We begin to die the moment we become silent about the things that matter. And with that, we will now conclude this June 10th, 2015 recording of Outside the Box TV, edition 351. Until next week, I'm Alex Ansary, reminding you the path to the ultimate truth and place of power still lies within. Take care.